Hi, welcome for everybody. Nice to see you again virtually. If you missed my previous logins, you can check it out on my Facebook page or the Facebook page of Hungarian Cultural Institute Delhi or on my YouTube channel, but I guess you have already know all of important information. The topic of this third presentation, the last one unfortunately, another one of my books related to India, My Eternal Love, Mysterious India, The Living Legacy of ERVIN Baktayi. This is a report book with István Székely, one of the relatives of Amrita, Sher-Gil, and ERVIN Baktayi, the famous Hungarian orientalist. The scenario is the usual. I will talk about the circumstances in which the book was born, and I will show you many family photos and the sixth generation family tree, and naturally I will read some parts from my book to get a feeling from it. So get it with love, because I made it with love. Bye.
In connection with my first book about India, several of my readers contacted me in some form, and so I came into contact with a very kind lady who is a good friend, Dr. István Székely. He's a living relative of Amrita Sher-Gil, who also knew personally the famous Hungarian orientalist ERVIN Baktayi, who is Amrita's uncle. I knew right away that I needed to find István and talk to him. He was very kind. In his apartment we talked a lot. He showed me family photos, reliefs from Uncle ERVIN. An in-depth interview followed, and eventually an English-Hungarian bilingual volume with lots of family photos and the sixth generation family tree was born. The title is My Eternal Love, Mysterious India, The Living Legacy of ERVIN Baktayi. Let me present the foreword. No one can reach the state of serenity until the course of action hasn't been reached. It's from Bhagavad Gita. This is what ERVIN Baktayi believed in. He has acted faithfully and with infinite, never-ending energy throughout his life until he has finally reached the serenity once his existence on earth full of experiences has been finished. Who was Baktayi in fact? It is hard to answer briefly, as his diverse personality could be the topic of many books, as they were already written few. So let me be a next one and present a personal memoir of a relative. Everyone stays alive until being present in our memories. Baktayi has the lead to the eternity. How do the lives of an Indian and a Hungarian family intertwined in the 18th century? It is like an adventure movie coming true, and this event is important for both cultures, leaves a special mark on both. Let the fairy tale begin, and the narrator, let him stay unveiled till the end of the story. Once upon a time there was a Maharaja named Dalip Singh, known as the Black Prince of Persia. Born in 1838 in the region of Punjab, India. He was the last Maharaja of the Sikh Empire. As he was enthroned at the age of 5, his mother reigned in his place. He also was the youngest son of the legendary Lion of the Punjab, Ranjit Singh, who reigned for nearly 50 years. After the death of Ranjit, power struggles flared up, and the British, worried about hostility, sent their troops to the Punjab frontier. This was the beginning of the Sikh Wars in 1845, which finally ended in 1849 with British victory. Dalip, who was under British guardianship all the time, was deprived of his throne. British India thus annexed the kingdom, and at the same time Punjab was attached to British India. Dalip was then sort of abducted by the British and was taken to the British royal court to be a guest of Queen Victoria. The Queen really enjoyed Dalip's company, and she became the godmother of many of his children. She also offered him £12,000 a year in annuities, and Dalip converted to Christian religion. Once, one of Dalip's daughters, Princess Bamba, was looking for a companion, so she posted an advertisement in the local papers. As a condition, she expected the applicant to be musically trained and to readily follow her to India over time. Marie Antoinette Gottesman, alias Maria Antonia, who was of Hungarian origin, happened to be in London at that time, and she came across the advertisement. His father, Rau Gottesman, was a rich man who encouraged his children to gain experience abroad. Marie Antoinette also received a family appanage, which she used to travel to London to a friend. This is how she found the ad, and she applied immediately. Princess Bamba decided to employ her. That was no surprise. The girl sang and played the piano, according to family legend, beautifully. She learned to sing at Puccini. Besides, she was a pretty woman according to the taste at the time. That latter was later turned out to be unfortunate for Princess Bamba. Her fiancé, the aristocrat scientist Umrau Magicia Singh Sher-Gil, and Maria Antonia had fallen in love. They returned back to Hungary, newly married, in 1912. Their first child, Amrita Sher-Gil, was born in 1913 in Budapest, in the mansion at Szilágyi Dezső Square. This is also indicated by an English-Hungarian bilingual plaque under number 4. Amrita Sher-Gil, 1913 to 1941, eminent painter and artist of Indo-Hungarian parentage, daughter of Umrau Singh and Antonia Gottesman. Niece of Dr. ERVIN Baktayi, was born in this house on 30th January 1913. Last time I was there, a wreath with a ribbon adorned the plaque saying, "Eternal love for you, immortal Amrita." They lived there for a while, and then they moved to the sister of Antonia, Gabriella Gottesman, and to her husband Lajos Szepesi, or as they said in the family, to Ella's. They lived in their house in Dunaharaszti for years. Amrita's sister Indira was born there already in 1914. Let's make a small detour in the history of the Gottesman family. The relationship between the Gottesman and the Szepesi family goes back to several generations. The Gottesman family owned a land called Baktaerdő in the territory of today's Ukraine and Romania, a historical area of Maramureș. In 1868, Franz Joseph donated the noble prename Erdő Baktai to the family. Adolf Gottesman, the grandfather of Ella, served as an officer in the Hussar regiment of the Hohenzollern prince in Theresienstadt. He was the one who bought Erdő Bakta. The grandfather of Ella's husband, Lajos Szepesi, was the Camp Supremus of Maramureș County. That included the Gottesman estate. This is how the two families knew each other. The young people fell in love and got married. ERVIN Gottesman is Ella's brother, who is known as ERVIN Baktai. He initially wanted to be a painter. His father, Raoul, paid attention to the children's proper education. Thanks to the family's wealth, ERVIN got the opportunity to learn from Simon Holosi in Munich. Later, he painted at the artist residence of Nagybánya. In 1916, he was called by the Great War. He stopped painting at this time, then traveled to India in 1926, partly because of the inviting world of Oriental art and partly inspired by the Indian mixed marriage of his sister Maria Antonia and Umrau Singh Sher-Gil. Their daughters, Amrita's first guide in painting was Uncle ERVIN. Uncle ERVIN has been studying India since the early 1920s. His first stay in India lasted from 1926 to 1929. Also, he had previously published writings on India, Rabindranath Tagore, Mahabharata extract, and selected writings of Gandhi. His first major work is India, a 2-volume documentary of the huge differences in social and living standards. Hungarian readers were given an authentic view of this country for the first time. They also got to know the pioneering scientific work of Sándor Körösi Csoma, who had tirelessly researched the origins of Hungarians. Baktai also described the scene of Körösi's death. He visited West Tibet monastery of Zangla and Phuktal with injured vertebrae infected with typhoid and malaria, where Sándor Csoma barely survived the winter without heating, only drinking yak butter tea. Baktai writes then when he was there. I wrote with ink on the lintels of the door, Csoma's room, and I started to carve out the inscription with my knife. Later, he also got a commemorative plaque carved. The local elders still remembered a white disciple speaking a strange language, and one of them met Csoma in person. Thanks to the small plaque, Balázs Irimiás, chairman of the Csoma's Room Foundation, could identify recently the location, and few years ago, with his leadership and with the help of volunteers and locals, the value-saving work in the area could begin. Baktai did not return from India voluntarily but for medical indications because he had malaria and was diagnosed with dysentery. They said they couldn't handle it there, so he returned home with the intervention from Aurel Stein. His passion for India, however, proved unquenchable, even though he was stuck here in Hungary for a long time. I shall not list all his works. It is enough to say that he wrote many volumes and had at least as many as co-author. He also made translations, wrote young adult books, and gave lectures. Between 1930 and 1944, he was a member of the Hungarian Geographical Society and was one of the editors of its journal, The Globe. This society was the publisher of a series that consisted of large, burgundy-colored, gold-plated, hardcover, beautifully designed volumes. Several books of ERVIN on India were published as part of this series: The Country of the Happy Valley, Wanderings in Kashmir, Punjab, the Land of Five Rivers. Meanwhile, in 1933, he was inaugurated as a professor in Debrecen and abroad. Then came World War II and the socialist era. By this time, he was not allowed to publish anything except young adult books. In the early and middle 1950s, he wrote The Art of India, but someone said that the volume was to be published only if it was supplemented by an opening chapter on India entering the path of communism. Uncle Ervin stated that he was unable to write this because he considered himself an art historian. Besides India, he was also passionate about the world of Native American. Through the summers, even as an adult, he went with his friends to Zebegény and later to the Kismaros Island, where they could only cross by boat to play to live as Indians. They dressed up as Indians and lived in traditional tents for weeks. They wore self-made embroidered pursuit outfits, and their tents were made of leather and canvas. Ervin was the sheriff, Hooligan Baktai, and the boss, Lying Bison. Their game was so serious and authentic that in 1930 their tribe was chosen as a member of the National Council of American Indians, and their activities were recognized by a certificate, as the whole initiative was preceded by lengthy ethnographic studies. In 1998, in memory of these camps, His friend József Lorenz and his second cousin Áron Hegymegi Kis founded an Indian cowboy museum in Kisorossi. Lorenz and Áron were members of the group of friends who attended these games regularly. The museum exhibited souvenirs related to these camps, collected with the help of friends and relatives. In 2012, the museum moved to Dunaharaszti, to Lafert Mansion, where it can be visited currently. Between 1946 and 1958, ERVIN worked as an independent curator at the Ferenc Hope Museum of East Asian Art, founded by the eponymous, and took the Indian section under his wing. He was the only person from Europe who got an official invitation by the Indian government for the Buddha Jayanti to celebrate the 2500th anniversary of Buddha's birth. With this, the government could not do anything and he was given permission to travel. Just after the revolution in November 1956, he and his wife, Aditi, went to India and stayed there for a year. Apart from giving lectures in Delhi, he met twice in a year with India Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, with whom he mostly talked about the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. Nehru obtained most of his information about it from Uncle Ervin, who spoke English, German, French, Hindi and Sanskrit, who even mentioned in his autobiographical book of his youth how fantastic experience he had reading his favorite books, The Three Musketeers, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer in original. After a year they returned to Vienna, where Ervin also gave lectures and visited his relatives. His wife came home from Vienna to Pest to see if her husband could come or if he should stay abroad. They wrote he could come, so he arrived in December of 57. After Ervin's death in 63, his widow, Aditi, her name was Edith but Ervin called her by this nickname, lived alone in her flat, where she lived with Ervin at Essex Street, number 16, in Buda, close to Moritz Zsigmond Square. Aditi inherited all the copyrights and she had a testament about the books before she died. She left the copyrights to the Ferenc Hope Museum of East Asian Arts. In addition to this, a part of the Baktayi legacy, his vast library, was donated to the museum in her life with the condition that she keeps the books, but after her death, the books shall be physically transferred to the museum. Further, she donated various objects, her desk and armchair, to the museum. The other great heir was the school named after ERVIN Baktayi on the main square of Dunaharaszti. His bust can be found there too. The school always invited Aditi to its events. She was always happy to participate. She didn't have other events in her life. In the 1990s, the Baktayi books began to be republished, and since copyrights were owned by Aditi, she agreed to take care of his husband's memory after his death. This is how a marble plaque was placed on the wall of their house in Essex Street by the local government. She saved all the money that came in from republishing the books and donated to the school. István Székely and Amrita Sher-Gil were family members. They were connected to each other through the famous Hungarian Indologist ERVIN Baktayi. From the stories of István Székely, we can learn about the life of Amrita and her relationship with ERVIN Baktayi. Unfortunately, Amrita was not alive when Székely was born, but Amrita knew Uncle Ervin, as she called Baktayi, personally. The childhood of Amrita was influenced by the experience in Hungary, the house in Dunaharaszti, and vacations in Zebegény. Amrita breathed in Hungarian culture at these places. She spoke Hungarian very well. Her correspondence, especially with her mother of Hungarian origin and other texts, can prove that her Hungarian was quite good. Her first works were made in Hungary. Those are children's drawings and watercolors. A lot of rich watercolors about folk tales characters or representative, mostly female figures. She was raised in a community of Hungarian culture, which was also international and European. They used to go to opera and the theater. Her mind, her fantasy was greatly inspired by these. Uncle Ervin was 21 years old when Amrita was born. As a child, Amrita used to draw. Uncle Ervin was not yet an Indologist interested in Indian philosophy at that time. He wanted to be a painter. As a painter, Baktayi took interest in Amrita's paintings. Looking at the drawings of the 5-7 years old little girl, he found Amrita very much talented. Baktayi tried to guide Amrita. However, Amrita went back to India with her family. In 1920 or 21, as World War I ended and the peace treaty signed, they got separated for a while. ERVIN Baktayi traveled to India in 1926 and he spent 3 years there. First, naturally, he visited the family of Amrita before he set out to travel around the country. He saw Amrita's paintings, saw how talented she was, and she did not need guidance anymore. István thinks that she herself decided that she would be a painter. When they went back to India, she started to carve her path as an artist. She, on her own, started to paint. She learned painting in a self-taught manner, or someone might have helped her. It was when they returned that she basically discovered India. Not the glitz and glamour, but the people and their everyday life. If we look at Indian art, especially Indian art in paintings, pictures, it is mostly richly adorned, made in the artistic style of the East. On the contrary, Amrita's paintings depict simple people, animals, elephants, camels, simple people in various situations, mostly moments of female life, like preparing a bride for her wedding. She started painting the other side of the coin, the real India. She could see that India has an intensely rich, colorful artistic past, and she wanted to make it in her fresh way contemporary. And so she did. That's why she has a special place in the history of Indian art. To me, Amrita had an open-minded personality, was a passionate soul, a modern, progressive lady. I also think she was ahead of her time. Therefore, there is still an ambivalent feeling around her personality. She was influenced by Gauguin. She came from the Parisian art salon and suddenly appeared on the scene in India. I know that she rattled people and raised some eyebrows, but often, even in Europe, she shocked people with her freedom and openness, which was her own. The liberal attitude she inherited from her family, from her mother, who was a cosmopolitan, intelligent European lady. She used to play the piano at social gatherings, family functions, and was open towards the world. Umrao was the other side of the coin. This makes Amrita's personality so interesting. On one hand, there was practice of and respect for traditions, and on the other, there was openness and passion. In my opinion, the person who identifies as Hungarian is Hungarian. She also considered herself half Hungarian, and she also had a Hungarian name, Dalma, as we know. On one hand, I sense her to be Hungarian. She belongs to us as well. She is an artist whose pictures are exhibited at the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi, so we can truly be proud of her. It is a fact that there have been plenty of Hungarian artists scattered all around the world who have been unfairly forgotten by us. Amrita belongs to this unforgotten circle. I hope that I can address many people and tell them that we have Amrita, of whom we can be proud of. She is as much Hungarian as she is Indian.